Yes, hello, I'm Andrew. There's been quite a few mentions of Schematron, so that's encouraging. I hope you're not sick of it already. A bit about me, I've been working validating XML, trying to do it in ways that schemas can't since about 2000. And last year I became project editor, that's the phrase, of the Schematron standard, which is ISO IEC 19757-3, or part 3 of DSDL, if you prefer. So it's an ISO standard. Yeah, how about that? I think the thing is pointing away from me.
Don't worry, don't worry. Okay.
Cool. Hello, how's that? No better?
No.
How about I just hold it? No? It's on.
Here, I'll just that's it. Take it away now.
Okay, how's that?
Maybe just speak slightly loud. Just slightly loud.
Right. Should I start again?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm the project editor for the Schematron standard. I've been working in this area for about 17 years now. I'm not bored yet, and warning, these are my personal opinions. These are not the opinions of either my employer or ISO, and I'm going to try and evangelize, if I can make myself heard. A quick straw poll with apologies to those in the UK who may be sick of polls by now. Who doesn't know what Schematron is? Good. Who knows but doesn't use it? Better. Thank you.
I'm going to ask who uses it? Come on.
All right. Who uses Schematron? Wonderful. Thank you, friends. Not that the others weren't friends. Okay, I think Schematron is a sleeper standard myself because it kind of arose from a nice community effort. It didn't come to prominence with any great PR or fanfare, but it's now quite widely used based on a straw poll. And I think part of the reason for that is just it's a very simple idea that just works, and it obviously owes a big debt to XSLT and implementations of XSLT. And I quite like this quote because it promotes my cause. It may well be the XML project's greatest technical legacy to the world. I don't know about that really, actually, but that might be overstating it, but it's certainly a very good thing, and if you use it, in my opinion, you're on the way to nirvana. What is Schematron? Another quote in the words of the inventor of Schematron, Rick Jelliff, it's a feather duster to reach the corners that other schema languages cannot reach. So schemas are great, but there are certain things they can't do. Schematron offers you the means to express business rules. So it's not grammar-based, and apologies if you know all this already, but it offers greater flexibility to check your XML than just a plain schema. You can have an extra validation layer over the top. It offers protection against bad data, is how I would sell it, or bad content if you prefer. And it's just another XML format, so if you know XPath, you're halfway there. If you know XSLT, even better. And a brief digression, if Schematron's so great, what did we do before? Well, of course, people were doing this before, doing other things, doing it in other ways. Myself, for my sins, I wrote bespoke SAX handlers, which are great. They perform, but they're really hard to maintain. You could write XSLT. I think Mike was saying yesterday, there's a case for that, and why not? Absolutely. Schematron itself is just XSLT behind the scenes. So you develop in-house conventions, but they have an associated cost in time and money. And my question to you is, would you really write your own schema or transformation language? And if you answer yes to either of those, maybe my cause is lost and we should talk afterwards. But I think if someone's already done it, then why not use it? There are other perfectly valid ways to do this. But Schematron is the best, I think. So an example of what you can do with it, where you can do traditionally hard things like table checking, and I've got a reference at the end. I think Nigel wrote some great Schematron for checking cows tables. You can do these co-occurrence constraint things where you mandate that if something in your document is present, then something else must be present, not an ID ref, or not something that is wrapped up together, but completely distinct, separate things. Another one that people who aren't familiar with the technology often like is that you can go off and examine remote resources that have nothing whatever to do with your document. They could be in a database somewhere at the end of a URL somewhere, and examine what they are and see whether they tally with what you have in your document that you are actually validating, and so on and so on. Benefits to implementers, so people who actually have to get their hands dirty and write Schematron rules. Your approach to expressing these constraints is formalized. So as I say, you don't have to come up with your own way of doing it. There's no need to roll your own. A great way to sell it to people who may be paying for you to do it is if it can be computed, Schematron can check it. So we will have all bases covered in theory. The inclusion model promotes or allows modularity, so you can divvy up your work quite nicely and share it out between your modules. The abstraction model promotes code reuse and a lower degree of maintenance. For those people who are forced to put their hands in their pockets or evangelize upwards, it's an open standard. It's freely available, unlike a lot of ISO standards. You don't have to pay any Swiss francs to get hold of a copy. Its main implementation is free. It's also open source. There's a link to it at the end. There is great tool support now in Oxygen and other editors. It's more easy to maintain a Schematron rule set. There's reduced reliance on bespoke tools and their keepers. I think situations can arise where you have an in-house solution and then the person who owns that can become a gatekeeper and a blocker. But it's possible to kind of democratize your work with Schematron. This was something that came up yesterday in the panel discussion and in Bert's talk earlier today. You get a better and faster feedback loop to improve content quality with Schematron. So your errors are being spotted and they're being addressed more quickly. And the benefit to users, and I mean this in the broader sense, so the people who have to write the code and also the people who are interested in what's in the data and what's in the content. Person A can implement the rule and write the code, and if you like, you could separate it like this. And person B can write the message. I was going to say error message, but it might not be an error. And they can explain how to fix it. So each of these experts can concentrate on their own area of expertise. You don't have to force the programmer to engage with content, and you don't have to force the content person to write code. And for me, I think this is probably the biggest benefit of Schematron, because I've called this validity redefined. So I think this was the point at which we said about XML, it's no longer a simple binary condition. Is it valid or invalid? Now, of course, the output of a Schematron validation process is whether it's valid or invalid, but because of the messages that you can report about your test instance, you're not just concerned with validity or invalidity, you're actually concerned with the ways in which it's invalid, if it is invalid, and the degree to which those things apply. So it's a fine-grained measure of validity. The validation results themselves, and this is really a godsend, are themselves XML, so they can be stored, they can be queried, they can be processed. And that gives you the ability, if you want, to get some metrics from all of that information. And if you really want to be meta about it, you could write Schematron schemas for the results. And it opens the way to this idea of scoring your content. So not just a plain pass-fail, but what bar do we have to reach to say this is now publishable, this can go, this is usable. And another bit of spin, maybe. It adds agility to your validation. So you're not just having a fairly static schema that you apply to a corpus of content. You have the flexibility to tailor the validation to a particular stage in the workflow. Even within the schema itself, you can have different rules applying at different stages through the phase mechanism. And you can also tailor those messages to a particular audience. And there's, including in other languages through internationalization. So just a word on, this is completely my opinion, but I think in terms of best practice, what you should do is, Schematron schemas, it seems to me, often people hit on the idea and they grow quite organically, and they don't necessarily start with great plans at the start. This may not always be the case, but so you should treat it like any other software. You should document it thoroughly, you should have test suites, and you should also, if possible, tie those constraints, those asserts and reports, to your business requirements early, because it's really easy to forget why element X was required inside element Y with an attribute of Z years later. Something we also discussed in the panel yesterday was, okay, you've got your validation, but you really need people who understand your content to fix it. Absolutely. We all understand, I think, in this room that you can't just automate. Well, there's lots of stuff that you can't automate, but we also understand there's lots of stuff you can. So to address this, there is the Schematron Quick Fix initiative. And this is a way to extend your existing schemas with foreign elements and attributes. And I think Bert mentioned this too. You have automated fixes, essentially. So your editor can run a validation and then decide which fixes to apply to a document in their editor of choice, which is extremely useful. That's about all I had to say. I've put these slides on GitHub. There's a link to the standard. I want to say thank you to Tony for rescuing the Schematron code from Google Code and sticking it on GitHub in the first place. So thank you. Rick Jellif's site is schematron.com. So he's the inventor. There's the quick fix guys. Also a link to Nigel's very useful cows table Schematron, and the slides are at the bottom. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions? Debbie?
I don't have a question so much as a comment. I completely agree with your use of what's great about Schematron. We use it a lot. But there's a psychological advantage I hadn't realized and you didn't mention. When the messages are written by one group, let's say editors, and they can maintain those in a spreadsheet, and they have thousands of them. And then the Schematron's written by programmers that finds that condition, writes the code. The psychological thing is the editors say, those programmers are doing my will, not those blankly blank programmers are imposing on me the way they used to. They think of it as, oh, they're serving me. Here's my error condition, here's my message, and they do it. It's a fascinating psychological difference.
Yep.
One more comment, I'm really sorry. That quote of Rick Jellif's, I've used it a lot too. I mean, the feather duster, it's such a great quote. But if you Google it, you'll find Rick saying, on some source or other, I don't remember saying that, but I don't mind saying, it's a great quote, quote me on it. So I called him, And he wouldn't tell me. He just laughed and laughed and laughed and said, "It's a good thing to have said, wouldn't it be?" So I don't know if he said it or not, but I think it's a marvelous quote. So
Okay, thank you.
he wouldn't tell me. He just laughed.
He now quotes it on his own website, so
Oh, goodness.
So you did take away some magic.
Well, just a quick question. I don't use it that much. Just remind me, does it work on well-formed XML that's not necessarily valid to a particular schema? Does it have to? Because I was going to say, if it does that, that's great, because in the world where people are creating kind of merged XML feeds of things,
yes.
where you haven't actually got a specific schema,
No schema
you still want to do
necessary.
some validation of some sort. This is
Absolutely, yeah. And at the demo jam last night, all the test cases I had in my test suite were all well formed. I didn't show you that. Yeah.
Just another comment, a use of Schematron that you didn't mention specifically. In the area of regression testing, it's quite useful because you can check just the things that you want to check, rather than saying, this result is exactly equal to this result. For example, if you had some XSLT that was supposed to add an attribute to something, rather than saying this is the exact result I want, you can use Schematron to say the attribute has been added in the correct places. And that makes your regression tests less susceptible to changes in other parts of your pipeline.
Yes. That's a good point.
Thank you very much, Andrew.